My name is Liza Boone, 28 years old, and if someone had told me a year ago that my own family would throw me out of the house on my birthday, I would have laughed in disbelief. Families argue. Families disappoint each other. But families don't dump their own daughter onto the front lawn beside a pile of cardboard boxes like she's yesterday's trash. At least, that's what I believed. Back then, I worked as a marketing assistant. It wasn't glamorous, and it certainly wasn't the kind of career that impressed people who measured success by job titles alone. Still, I loved what I did. Every campaign I helped launch, every client who smiled after seeing our work, reminded me that creativity mattered. Unfortunately, none of that mattered inside my parents' house. To my mother, Linda Boone, my job was a joke. "So," she'd ask almost every week without even looking at me, "when are you finally going to get a real career?" "I already have one." She'd scoff before I could finish. "No, Liza, doctors have careers. Lawyers have careers. You're just making advertisements." It didn't matter how many hours I worked. It didn't matter that I paid nearly half the household expenses. Nothing I ever did was enough. Every month, I transferred money to cover utility bills before anyone else even thought about them. When groceries ran low, I filled the refrigerator. When the washing machine broke, I paid to repair it. When the roof leaked after a storm, I hired someone to fix it because no one else seemed interested. Meanwhile, my younger brother Ryan was 26 years old and contributed almost nothing. He spent his days chasing internet fame, filming short videos, counting followers, and acting like one viral post would solve every problem in his life. He rarely cleaned, rarely cooked, never offered to help with bills, yet somehow I was the disappointment. Dad, Richard Boone, wasn't openly cruel. His silence was. Whenever Mom criticized me, he'd lower his eyes toward the newspaper or television, pretending not to hear. Every opportunity to defend me passed in complete silence. Sometimes silence hurts more than insults, because silence feels like agreement. Despite everything, my 28th birthday was approaching, and against all logic, I still hoped. Not for expensive gifts, not for some elaborate surprise, just one peaceful evening, a birthday dinner, a cake, maybe a few laughs. Maybe one memory that didn't end in disappointment. 3 days before my birthday, I stopped by a bakery downtown after work. The display window was filled with elegant cakes decorated with fresh fruit and delicate chocolate designs. I stood there longer than I should have before choosing one covered with strawberries and dark chocolate curls. It cost more than I wanted to spend. I bought it anyway. Carrying it to my car, I actually smiled. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe. A couple of nights before my birthday, I tried bringing it up during dinner. "I was thinking," I began carefully, "maybe this weekend we could celebrate together. Just us." Mom didn't even raise her eyes from the magazine in her lap. "We'll see." Dad quietly continued eating. Ryan shrugged. "We might already have plans." Plans? On my birthday. The words settled heavily in my chest, but I forced myself not to overthink them. I wanted to believe there was still room for hope. Looking back now, I realize hope can sometimes be the cruelest thing. The morning of my birthday actually started beautifully. The office surprised me with balloons tied around my desk. One coworker brought donuts. Another insisted everyone sing happy birthday before our morning meeting. Someone even slipped a handwritten birthday card onto my keyboard, thanking me for always helping everyone else. For several wonderful hours, I forgot how lonely home usually felt. After work, I bought myself a navy blue blazer I'd been admiring for weeks. Nothing extravagant, just something that made me feel confident. Driving home, I caught myself smiling. I remember turning into our driveway, thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd find candles lit around that birthday cake waiting inside. Instead, I slammed on the brakes. Boxes, garbage bags, plastic storage bins, suitcases. Everything I owned was scattered across the front lawn. For one terrifying second, I thought someone had robbed the house. Then I saw them. Mom, Dad, Ryan, standing together on the porch, waiting. My heartbeat became deafening. I climbed out of the car so quickly I nearly dropped my purse. What happened? No one answered immediately. Mom stepped forward first. Her expression was completely unreadable. "Liza," she said calmly, "it's time for you to move out." I stared at her. What? You're no longer welcome here." For a moment, I honestly thought she was joking. This isn't funny. It wasn't meant to be. I turned toward Dad. Surely he'd stop this. Surely he'd tell her she'd gone too far. Dad? He never even looked at me. His hands stayed buried inside his jacket pockets, while his eyes remained fixed on the ground. That hurt almost more than Mom's words. "But," my voice cracked, "today's my birthday." Mom simply folded her arms, and one word. That was all. No hesitation, no guilt, no remorse. "I don't understand." "You've stayed here long enough," she replied. "You need to grow up." Ryan laughed quietly beside her. "Maybe if you'd stopped being such a burden, this wouldn't be happening." A burden. The word echoed inside my head. The daughter paying their bills. The daughter repairing the house. The daughter buying their groceries. The burden. I looked directly at my mother. "I've done everything I could for this family." It wasn't enough. She said it without emotion. "We need the space." I felt something inside me quietly collapse. Not dramatically, just quietly. Like a bridge finally giving way after years of carrying too much weight. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Can I at least pack my own things?" "They're already packed." She pointed toward the boxes on the lawn. Every book I'd collected, every framed photograph, every piece of clothing, every memory. Reduced to cardboard boxes stacked beside the driveway. I loaded everything into my old sedan by myself, box after box, trip after trip. No one offered to help. No one apologized. Ryan occasionally checked his phone. Dad never moved. Mom watched as if supervising movers she'd hired. Halfway through loading the car, I stopped. I turned around one final time. Why today? The question barely escaped my lips. Mom actually smiled. "Consider it our birthday gift." She paused. "Independence." I don't remember closing the trunk. I don't remember starting the engine. I only remember looking through the windshield one last time. None of them waved goodbye. None of them changed their minds. None of them even looked sad. The front door closed behind them before I had even backed out of the driveway, as though I'd never existed. That night, I rented the cheapest motel room I could find. The neon vacancy sign outside flickered every few seconds. The room smelled faintly of bleach, old carpet, and cigarette smoke. My unopened birthday cake sat untouched on the tiny table across from the bed. I stared at it for nearly an hour. Eventually, I opened the box, not to eat it, just to look at it. 28 candles still rested inside the bakery bag, unused, just like the celebration I'd imagined. I finally sat on the edge of the bed and allowed myself to cry. Not because I'd lost a house, but because I'd finally accepted something I'd spent years refusing to believe. I had been trying to earn love from people who had already decided I wasn't worth loving. Somewhere around 4 in the morning, after every tear had finally run dry, I stood in front of the cracked motel mirror and looked at the exhausted woman staring back at me. "I promise you," I whispered to my own reflection, "no matter how hard this becomes, no one will ever have the power to throw you away again." That promise became the foundation of everything I would build afterward. The morning after my birthday didn't feel like the beginning of a new year of my life. It felt like survival. I barely slept in that motel room. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my belongings scattered across the lawn and heard my mother's voice calling it my birthday gift. By sunrise, I realized something painful. No one was coming to apologize. No one was coming to save me. If I wanted a future, I would have to build it myself. I checked out of the motel, loaded the last of my boxes into my aging sedan, and drove straight to work. The office became my refuge. For the first time in years, I was surrounded by people who appreciated what I contributed instead of criticizing what I lacked. I arrived earlier than usual and stayed later than everyone else. Emails, presentations, client meetings, design revisions. If I kept moving, I didn't have to think. It worked, at least for a while. A week later, my supervisor, Hannah Collins, appeared beside my desk after everyone else had gone home. "Liza," I looked up from my laptop. "You've been here every night." "I'm just trying to stay ahead," she crossed her arms. "No," she spoke gently. "You're trying not to fall apart." The words hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to deny it. Instead, I burst into tears, not loud sobbing, just quiet tears that refused to stop. Hannah pulled a chair beside me. She didn't interrupt. She simply listened while I told her everything. The birthday, the boxes, my parents, Ryan laughing while I packed my life into my car. When I finally finished, the office was completely silent. "I'm staying at a motel," I admitted quietly. "It's expensive, but I don't have another choice." Hannah stared at me for several seconds before speaking. "You do now." I frowned. "I have a guest room." I blinked. "What?" "You'll stay with me." "Hannah, it's temporary," she interrupted, "until you get back on your feet." "I can't ask you to—" "You didn't," she smiled warmly. "I'm offering." I felt tears threatening again. People talk about kindness as if it's some dramatic, life-changing event. Sometimes, kindness is simply someone opening a door after every other door has been slammed in your face. 2 days later, I moved into Hannah's spare bedroom. It wasn't large, it wasn't luxurious, but it was peaceful. There were clean sheets, warm lighting, fresh coffee every morning. Most importantly, no one made me feel unwanted. For the first time in months, I slept through an entire night. That should have been enough. Instead, it fueled me. I became obsessed with rebuilding. During the day, I worked my full-time job. At night, I accepted freelance marketing projects, weekend branding campaigns, website redesigns, social media launches. Some nights I worked until 3 or 4 in the morning before collapsing into bed for a few hours and doing it all over again. Hannah worried. "Liza," she said one evening while placing dinner beside my laptop, "you can't keep doing this forever." "I know." "So why are you?" I stared at the spreadsheet on my screen. "Because I never want to depend on anyone again." She didn't argue. She simply squeezed my shoulder before walking away. Months passed. Slowly, my bank account grew. Clients began recommending me to other companies. My freelance work expanded faster than I ever imagined. For the first time, people were recognizing my talent instead of questioning it. One afternoon, Hannah called me into her office. She was smiling before I even sat down. "Should I be nervous?" "No," she laughed. "You should be proud." She slid a folder across the desk. Inside was an official promotion letter. Lead marketing designer. My eyes widened. "Hannah, it comes with a significant raise." I read the letter twice, then 3 times. I don't know what to say." "You've earned every bit of it." She leaned back in her chair. "When you first came here after your birthday, you looked like someone waiting for life to end." She smiled. "Now you look like someone who's finally living it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Because she was right. That frightened young woman sitting alone in a motel room already felt like someone else. Around the same time, my best friend, Ethan Walker, called during one of my late-night freelance sessions. "So," I answered, "how's the workaholic?" "Still working." "You know normal people sleep." "I vaguely remember that." He laughed. Then his voice became serious. "You know what would make your family absolutely furious?" "What?" "You becoming wildly successful." I laughed. "I'm not doing this to prove them wrong." "I know." He paused. "But proving yourself right feels even better." That sentence stayed with me. Every promotion, every paycheck, every new client, none of it was revenge. It was freedom. Nearly 8 months after my birthday, I finally had enough money saved to start looking for a place of my own. The day I received the apartment keys, I stood alone in the empty living room for nearly 10 minutes. Sunlight poured through the massive windows. The hardwood floors gleamed. It wasn't enormous, but it was mine. No one could throw me out. No one could tell me I didn't belong. I bought a small plant for the kitchen, a comfortable gray sofa, bookshelves I'd always wanted but never had room for. Little by little, the apartment stopped looking like a building. It started feeling like home. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. The screen displayed a name I hadn't seen in months. Ryan. I stared at it until it nearly stopped ringing. Curiosity finally won. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Liza?" His voice sounded strangely uncertain. "What do you want?" Another pause. I need your help." I almost laughed. "You've got the wrong number." "Please." It was the first time I'd ever heard desperation in his voice. "It's about Dad." I remained silent. "He lost his job." I didn't respond. "Mom," he sighed heavily. "She's been spending money we don't have." "Ryan, our debts are getting out of control." Still, nothing. I can't even afford tuition anymore. Finally, I spoke. "So, let me understand this." He hesitated. "You ignored me for 8 months. You watched them throw me out on my birthday. You never called. You never apologized." I took a slow breath. "And now you're calling because you need money." "It's not like that." "Really?" "We're family." Those 2 words instantly erased every ounce of sympathy I'd been starting to feel. "Family?" My voice became ice cold. "Family doesn't dump their daughter onto the lawn like garbage." Ryan didn't answer. "Liza." "No. You don't understand how bad things are." I closed my eyes. "I understand perfectly." Another long silence. Then he whispered, "We don't know what to do." I looked around my apartment. The apartment I'd built without them. The apartment that existed because I refused to give up after they abandoned me. Finally, I answered. "The day you threw me away," I paused. "You lost the right to ask me to save you." Before he could respond, I ended the call. I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. I thought that would be the last time I'd ever hear from them. I couldn't have been more wrong. Because only 3 weeks later, the doorbell rang. When I checked the security camera, my stomach dropped. Standing outside my new apartment were my mother, my father, and Ryan. For several seconds, I simply stood there, staring at the security camera feed. My mother, my father, Ryan. Standing outside the apartment they had never been invited to. I almost ignored the doorbell altogether. Then I remembered something Hannah had once told me. You'll never know whether someone has changed unless you let them show you who they are. Taking a slow breath, I unlocked the door. The moment it opened, my mother brushed past me without waiting for permission. She walked into my living room as though she still owned every place I lived. Her eyes swept across the hardwood floors, the modern furniture, the oversized windows overlooking the city. "Well," she said with an approving nod, "you've certainly done well for yourself." Not, "I'm sorry," not, "happy to see you're okay," just an inspection. Ryan followed awkwardly behind her, refusing to meet my eyes. Dad entered last, shoulders slumped, looking older than I remembered. "What are you doing here?" I asked. Mom smiled. "We came to talk." "I don't think there's anything left to talk about." "Oh, there is." She sat on my couch without asking. Dad remained standing. Ryan hovered near the doorway. Mom folded her hands together as if she were about to conduct a business meeting. "We've been discussing the future." "My future doesn't involve any of you." She ignored the comment. "We've decided the family should live together again." For a moment, I genuinely wondered whether I'd heard her correctly. "What?" She looked around my apartment. "This place has plenty of room." I couldn't stop staring at her. "You want to move in here?" "Of course." She said it as though it were obvious. "We're family." I actually laughed, not because anything was funny, because the sheer audacity of the request was unbelievable. Ryan finally spoke. "Come on, Liza." His tone carried the same smug confidence I'd grown up hearing. "Let's not keep bringing up the past." I slowly turned toward him. "The past?" "You know what I mean." "Do you?" He shifted uncomfortably. "People make mistakes." "You stood there." He frowned. "When Mom threw my belongings onto the lawn," I took one slow step toward him. "You stood there laughing." His expression faltered. "You watched me load everything I owned into my car." Another step. "You watched me spend my birthday homeless." He looked away. You never called." "I know." "You never apologized." You only called when you needed money." The apartment fell silent. Mom suddenly stood. "We're not here to argue." "No?" "No." She pointed around the room. "We're here because this apartment belongs to the family now." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "You wouldn't have this place without us." I stared at her in complete disbelief. "What exactly did you contribute?" "We raised you. You abandoned me. We motivated you. You threw me away. It made you stronger." Those words hit harder than anything she'd ever said. For years, she'd dismissed my accomplishments. Now she wanted credit for them. I couldn't believe it. Dad finally cleared his throat. "Liza." His voice sounded hesitant. "We've fallen on difficult times." I looked at him. He still couldn't meet my eyes. "I lost my job." "I know," Ryan told me. Dad sighed. "The mortgage is behind." Mom interrupted. "We're selling the house." I folded my arms. "And?" "We'll move in here while we get back on our feet." "No." She frowned. "You didn't let me finish." "You don't need to." "This apartment has enough bedrooms." "No." "We're your parents." "No." "You owe us." "No." Every answer came quicker than the last. Mom's expression hardened. "You're being selfish." Something inside me finally snapped. "Selfish?" I laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about selfish?" I pointed toward the door. "Who threw their daughter out on her birthday?" No one answered. "Who watched her sleep in a motel?" Silence. "Who ignored every phone call?" More silence. Who suddenly remembered she existed the moment they needed money? Ryan lowered his head. Dad rubbed his forehead. Mom remained defiant. We gave you life. You also tried to destroy it. You should be grateful. For what? For making you independent. I shook my head slowly. I became independent despite you, not because of you. The room became unbearably quiet. Then Mom said something that made my blood run cold. If you refuse to help us, she took one deliberate step closer, then this apartment is a family asset. I stared at her. A what? You heard me. She crossed her arms. You bought it because of everything we sacrificed raising you. I almost laughed again. This property belongs to me. It belongs to the family. It belongs to me. We'll let a judge decide. There it was, the threat, exactly as I'd expected. Dad looked startled. Linda. She ignored him. We have rights. What rights? As your parents. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I paid every cent for this apartment. You still owe us. I owe you nothing. Ryan finally spoke again. Just let us stay for a few months. I looked directly at him. When I needed one night, I paused. You gave me nothing. He closed his eyes. For the first time since they'd arrived, guilt finally appeared on his face. Liza, I'm sorry. The words were quiet, almost too quiet to hear. I studied him for several seconds. Part of me wanted to believe him. Then I remembered something. I'm sorry. Those two words had come only after they'd asked to move into my apartment. Not after my birthday. Not after months of silence. Not after abandoning me. Only now, when they needed something. The timing said everything. I walked to the front door and pulled it open. This conversation is over. Mom didn't move. I said, I looked directly into her eyes. Leave. She laughed. You'll regret this. No, I answered calmly. I already regretted spending years trying to earn your love. Dad quietly placed a hand on Mom's shoulder. We should go. She pulled away. This isn't finished. It is. Ryan hesitated before walking toward the door. As he passed me, he stopped. I really am sorry. I didn't answer, because some apologies arrive too late to change anything. Dad followed him outside. Mom remained standing in the doorway for another few seconds. You'll hear from our lawyer. I smiled for the first time since opening the door. I'll be waiting. She stormed out. I closed the door, locked it, then leaned against it as silence filled the apartment once more. My hands were trembling. My heart was racing. But something inside me felt different. Not broken. Not angry. Free. The next morning, I called my closest friend, Ethan Walker. He wasn't just my best friend anymore. He had recently become an attorney. After listening to everything that happened, he didn't hesitate. Liza. His voice became serious. They're desperate. I figured. And desperate people make dangerous decisions. What should I do? You protect yourself. Within days, Ethan uncovered something none of us had expected. My parents hadn't simply fallen on hard times. They'd been drowning in debt for years. Unpaid taxes, hidden loans, maxed out credit cards, questionable financial records. Losing Dad's job hadn't created the crisis. It had simply exposed it. Suddenly, everything made sense. They hadn't come because they missed me. They hadn't come because they loved me. They had come because I was their last financial lifeline. And when I refused, they called me selfish. Ethan immediately helped me file for a restraining order. He also documented every threatening message, every unwanted visit, and every demand they had made regarding my apartment. A few weeks later, the order was approved. Not long after that, government investigators began examining my parents' financial records. Their own decisions finally caught up with them. I didn't celebrate. I didn't seek revenge. I simply continued living the life I'd built without them. One quiet evening, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of gold and orange. For the first time in my life, home wasn't a place filled with fear. It wasn't a building where I had to earn the right to belong. It was wherever I chose to stand. I smiled to myself, because the greatest gift I ever received wasn't independence on my 28th birthday. It was discovering that walking away from people who refuse to love you isn't losing a family. Sometimes, it's finally finding yourself.